To order the meeting of the North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District District Advisory Committee. Tonight is March the 12th. Today's March the 12th, Wednesday. We're here at the Aquatic Center at 5:30 p.m. In person and on Zoom. Hi, I'm Jeanette DeCastro. I'm the chair. Our vice chair, Mark Elliott, could not be here tonight. He has an excused absence. So I will call us to order. And with that, our first action item is the approval of the DAC meeting summary from February 12th, 2025. Would you like a motion? Certainly, if they're
I'll move to approve the meeting summary of February 12th.
I will second that motion. Okay, moved and seconded. Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. That will take us to our item 3, which is our discussion agenda. First is our DAC facilitation recap with Camille Summer of Interplay. And I'll hand over.
Thank you so much, Jeanette. Hi, everyone. How's everybody doing? Good. All right, so I'm glad to be back again. And tonight I want to ground us in the findings that I have based on the conversations I had with each and every one of you through the discovery interviews. So what I'm going to reflect back to you should feel very familiar. That's what you told me. And I tried to make some meaning out of it at a macro level to understand what are the biggest challenges and barriers that are impeding the DAC. How are folks articulating them? And most importantly, what are the opportunities to overcome those challenges? So I have a slide deck. Grover, can you see? I see you're close to the screen. Great. Can you see the screen, Grover?
I can read it.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Perfect. Okay. I want to make sure that you're able to follow along. So what I want to do today is establish a baseline understanding across this room of the key challenges and barriers that I heard from DAC members. I want to also surface key themes that shape potentially future planning that we may do together based on what those barriers and challenges are. Okay, so again, this is what I heard from you also. It should feel very, very clear. Okay. So the number one key finding, I think is deeply important, which is that based on what I heard from everyone, DAC members do not have a strong understanding of their purpose and their role right now. There are clear motivations around the table for why folks are here. That was super evident, right? Folks want to make a difference in their community. They want to make sure that there's community-centered planning and decision-making, and that there is advocacy for some areas to make sure that our parks and recreation programs are best aligned with the needs of the community, right? That was very clear. But there is a sense of an unclear purpose around the work that you're doing right now. And that there is, a lot of uncertainty and confusion around how the work that you're doing in your monthly meetings contributes to the overall kind of near-term objectives or vision you hold for the work that you do. And I thought that was really telling. I want to be really honest. And I think that what I think is that there's a opportunity to overcome this relatively quickly. It just requires some more structured time together. And some of you had previewed that that might be an option that some are interested in the interest of aligning on a vision and near-term objectives. Additional themes that came up was there seems to be a lack of interaction with the board of directors, which is why folks are really unclear about purpose and role, because this advisory committee is uniquely designed to interact with the board of directors. And so folks kind of were having a lot of questions around that. There was some confusion about the goal setting exercise that you all did last September and how that now is playing out in terms of the work that you're doing or the connection point. So maybe there's a disconnect there around what was articulated during that exercise and how it's informing or shaping the work that you're doing now. And most importantly, what the work ahead looks like, right? So folks have some questions about what that may include. And so I think there's just some disconnection.
Do you have a clarifying question?
Yes.
When you say board of directors, are you talking about the North Clackamas Parks Board, not the county board?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, does that make sense?
Yes, I just wasn't clear, yeah.
Well, but to be clear though, they're pretty much interchangeable, correct? I mean, you understand that, I'm not trying to speak out of turn, but yeah, the board of directors for NCPRD is the board of county commissioners. They're one and the same, they just change hats when they have. meetings.
Okay,
There's not a mystery board that we've never met.
so the board,
We know who they are, we may have met them all, but.
This is another.
I was, that is, I mean, it was something I was confused early on, but yeah, it's a little confusing, but,
okay,
but they are this, one and the same, just different.
okay.
Okay, so did you not know that before?
Well, just when it said board,
DOD,
Yeah,
it wasn't, yeah,
it wasn't clear which board of directors, because I thought.
thought there were two, but they're one and the same. Okay.
So it might be helpful for everyone to know that they actually gavel in as NCPRD Board of Directors, and then they gavel out and continue business for the rest of the county. So they are the same individuals. Director Savis is also a county commissioner. And so they are the same people, but they do gavel in and gavel out as NCPRD Board of Directors. And so you'll hear me call them directors, not county commissioners or commissioners.
Okay.
Okay. Grover.
Yes, I scratched my head and didn't realize I have not been seeing a strained relationship with the board of directors at all. We have almost no relationship, but that's different than a strained relationship. It has a very different implication from my perspective.
Mhm.
And the other part I wanted to comment on is the uncertain about their specific contribution. For me, that is, and having worked with volunteers for 30 some odd years, if people don't feel they're making a difference, why bother? And
Yeah.
that's where that fits for me. I don't think this body is addressing what it says in our bylaws is our purpose and goals. We don't get to deal with that. We don't get to roll up our sleeves and make any recommendations because we don't get enough information. That's not new news for all those who've heard me speak before. And I don't see, so that uncertainty about is that, well, if it says we're supposed to be advising them, where is the data points so that we could actually make a recommendation? And I, to this day, in all my time working here, have not gotten sufficient of that and still don't. So that's me.
All
Thank you.
right, well, we'll circle back to that. Okay, any other clarifying questions before we move on? I just got a few more findings. Okay, so you all recall that I asked about strengths. It's very clear that diversity in age, experience, opinion, and shared compassion is the DAC's biggest strength. This is a volunteer committee. You're here on the evenings during dinner time, and you could be doing a million other things, but you're here and you come back here. So it's very clear that there is a lot of compassion and a lot of commitment across the table, right? And that you believe that your biggest strength is just the diversity of experience and opinion, the fact that folks are in different sub areas and collaborating across sub areas to learn about this entire district. And that you all have engaged in advocacy efforts that you believe have been powerful on behalf and with community. That there's budding and strong relationships across the table despite ideological differences. There's a deep respect across all members and an intent to positively impact communities, which I think is a core strength of this advisory committee. But let's talk about weaknesses, right? This is kind of getting a little bit into what Grover was kind of surfacing, but in a different direction. I think there is a disconnect about the vision, the near-term goals, and the objectives that seems to be impeding the work of the DAC. Folks have reported feeling stalled by not having a clear vision of what you're working toward, even though when you look at materials over the past, even if I took a look at meeting materials for the past 6 months, right? It's clear to me that there is a work plan. Staff have been working on objectives, that they're really clear. It's telling to me that many folks around the DAC, new or otherwise, can't really articulate what that work plan is. So there's a disconnect happening, but that we can fix that. That is something that we can easily overcome. I also want to talk about, this feedback at a glance, I think is pretty powerful in that folks, mentioned there's a perpetual elephant in the room sometimes during DAC meetings, which causes us to avoid direct discussion about politically sensitive issues, right? That we probably should talk about or have a point of view on. As it relates to our work, and as long as it's within the scope of the DAC. And so I just want to name that's a tension that I have experienced while being here. But again, I think with some structured sessions, we can work through why that continues to be a dynamic that is preventing important conversations from happening. I think there's also some key themes around lack of clear vision that kept coming up. So that terminology, I don't know if you all have been talking, but that terminology came up quite a few times. And a lack of structured time to address challenges and barriers. So this is what Grover is getting at, is that many people across the table felt like, man, there are things that we start to touch on and then we don't not have enough time to really double click into it. And then we feel like we haven't really accomplished, or it feels like there's a cliffhanger and we need more structured time to talk about whatever the issue is, or understand, or get more data. And so I want to continue to pressure test this assumption that that is true. I did hear it, but I want to learn more. Like, what exactly are folks wanting to talk about? What are the sensitive issues? What's preventing you from having those conversations outside of time constraints? And if it's time constraints, we need to think critically about how to fix that, right? Given the cadence and the structure of the meetings. Okay. Opportunities. This is what we really need to dig into. I think we would benefit from some structured visioning and planning time together that builds on previous efforts. So I'm not recommending that you just throw out the goal setting exercise that we did in September. Why would you do that unless it's no longer relevant? Perhaps we build on it. We build clarity around it. What was agreed upon? If it was left unfinished, let's talk about why and how to move it across the finish line. Folks, I heard from every single person that they would want more structured time and increased member engagement, more time with each other, to build closer relationships, to understand historical context, to talk about sensitive issues, especially for new members who show up and they're like, I have no idea what the issue is, but I can feel the tension in the room. Why is that? What do I need to know to be helpful, to be supportive? And so that you have an opportunity to close those knowledge gaps while also increasing familiarity and have, I guess, build a point of view on district-wide issues. Again, I think this is really important to stay within scope. This is not about tackling issues that you have no purview. And you cannot provide a recommendation for. This is work that's directly tied to your goal setting, to your vision, and to the work plan of staff, right? Additional things that came up is a culture shift to promote problem solving. So how can you engage in problem solving in the moment and not rely so heavily on staff to do some of that work? Adding members with subject matter expertise. This came up a few times, which I think is interesting. So if we look across the table and we recognize that there's diversity in age, experience, opinion, sub area, what other expertise might we want to have on this table as we think about recruitment and onboarding for new members starting in the summer, right? What does that look like to have a really robust advisory committee that represents lots of different expertise related to parks, urban planning, budgeting, etc. And then there was this idea that got floated around by a couple of people around a retreat, an annual planning retreat, which I think could be self-sustainable, right? If you think about how you want to collaborate with staff, what are the topics that you think are most important? What type of knowledge gaps do you need to close? What type of onboarding needs to happen for new members, and have that kind of set the stage for bringing new folks onto the committee in a really formalized way, while getting you out in the field, so to speak, to check out some areas and make sure everybody is cognizant of the different issues happening in different subjects. Okay, so that was one idea. Okay, let's talk about threats. A lot of you mentioned that without a clear vision and a new framework for operationalizing the DAC, and when I say that, I mean having group agreements, having some different ways of structuring your meetings, right? That retention may suffer. We may lose some folks, right? Folks noted that some folks had rolled off right before I joined as a facilitator, that folks were really concerned about or disappointed by, right? And so just reflecting on why those folks have left, folks expressed concern about how do we retain our new folks, and not to put you on the spot, Daniel, but lots of eyes on you and Josh around how do we keep you? How do we make sure that you're feeling good about your role and that you're clear about your role and how you contribute to this process. And so additional things that I think that we've already worked towards, y'all, are lack of accountability measures, which are gonna be cleared up with your group agreements. That is your accountability mechanism, that in the future, I think we can review at each meeting, maybe even have them hanging in the room so that it's easy for every one of us to hold each other accountable. When we engage in sometimes sensitive discussion. And lack of direction, clear objective of goals. Again, I think through structured kind of visioning and planning work, we can achieve this. And we're not starting from scratch. We're building on the work that staff is already doing. We're creating clarity about what type of recommendations and feedback they need to make their work even better. So it's about getting really clear about the role and then making sure that we all are equipped to fulfill it. All right, a closer work. Look, I always pull direct quotes because as you all remember, your sessions are recorded, everything's anonymized, but wanted to offer this as more kind of insight into what I heard in different areas. So folks are thinking, I hope for positive change and improvements in the way that we can function as a committee. We need an evolution that transitioned us from a rubber stamp committee to an advisory body that the board of directors finds productive and informative. There's a lot more that we can do, but we need to establish our fundamentals first. All right, what questions are coming up for folks? Comments, thoughts, heartburn?
Well, and I don't know if this is an appropriate question, but I guess what I would want to know is what does North Clackamas Parks need from us? That's a great question. To me, that would be what guides our mission and vision is what we need.
I agree. And I think there can be definitely space for us to, that's why that structured time is important, so that they can answer this question. And that there's a framework that you can enter into when thinking about how to provide feedback that is helpful and supportive. How do you become champions of their work and ambassadors of their work, especially in the community? These are questions that we should be raising and answering together. What else? Any other questions, thoughts? Yeah, Jenna.
Yeah, I'll go. I think to combine my response to a couple of comments, to the question of what does NCPRD need from us? A more unified voice is part of that, and that will come with the understood shared vision and goals. That when they're truly shared.
Yeah.
And the other thing I want to talk about, Grover, is that I don't find the assertion that and I'm sorry, I lost my words. There are ways in which we have given feedback and it's been responded to positively. I'll give two examples. One is after former Director Bork left, I emailed Gary Schmidt, the county administrator, and asked for more transparency, particularly around things like leases ending or big changes that, I didn't feel I knew enough about as a DAC member. And the direct change I saw is that there was more transparency. And when there was the discussion around the Clackamas school, there was a special meeting held, and it was for our board specifically, so that we could be briefed, we could hear from community, and that it was very clear that the board of directors was the decision maker, but that we would be looped in. The second example is the naming policy, which was presented at a DAC meeting as a pretty fleshed out draft, but we had input to provide. And some of the input directly from Grover was mentioned by Director Savas on the dais when that policy was voted on. So I think that if there are narratives we have, and I include myself in this, about inefficiencies or ineffectiveness, I'd like us to try to challenge those so that there's not old tapes running in our head.
I also think it's helpful for us to recall, just as Jeanette did, the work that you've done over X number of years, months, that is directly related to the work plan of staff, so you can see the connection. I think that might get lost a little bit as you're moving forward. We all forget, I don't know what I did last week. I sure can't tell you what I did 3 months ago, but if we recap our wins, right? If we recap the work that we've done together in service to community that is moving policy along, that is helping with decision-making, I think it'll help you understand, oh, this is the work that we've done together. This has been our work plan over the last fiscal year, right? So I want to start to tee up some of that work so that you can, there's less of a disconnect about how you are sitting in your role and have been providing recommendations that have shaped what we now see today in terms of policy and practice. Okay. Other thoughts, comments? Before we move on? I think I only had 10 minutes, but yes, Lisa, go ahead.
So I think, you made reference to the goal setting that happened in September, and I just wanted to clarify that that was September of 2023. Because Sheila and Daniel are probably going, what goal setting? So it's been 18 months, you know, we do have new people, we will have a few more new people this summer. But I really felt when we did that goal setting, and I think Ally came in kind of midway through that process, it was about 4 months. There were, as I recall, 4 goals or objectives, and one of them had to do with outreach. And I am not gonna remember one of them, but the 2 big ones for me, and have been big ones for me forever, are revisiting the governance structure and raising the tax rate. And I think Musiri, the most recent person to leave us, was really one of the most passionate spokesmen for those 2 things. And we have, you know, I know actually the chair before Jeanette went to county commissioners and talked about those goals. Jeanette, I think, has gone to the county commissioner meeting and talked about those goals, but we really haven't done anything in 18 months to advance those goals. Now, I will say, some of what has been presented to us in the systems plan is bringing the tax rate goal sort of to a head.
That's a connection, right? That's a connection. Right.
Yeah, so that conversation does seem like it will come. But yeah, I guess I would say I have a frustration that we did a very, you know, a 4-month-long process and I haven't done much with that.
Yeah, and so it's worth revisiting to build off of that, to figure out what has been done, right? What's now coming up in the systems plan. And as we look forward and we think about a vision, what objectives within or what goals within ladder up to that vision? And so I think it's important for us, and are we aligned, right? I think some people may have some interpretations of what the goals mean versus others. Some have prioritized others. We need to understand the why and the rationale behind that so that there's alignment across the table. And you can't do that without some structured time to kind of address those. So thank you for bringing that up. Yeah.
Just to add on to accomplishments, the one that I see as the biggest outstanding one is that maybe everybody in the room doesn't know is that at one point, the justice property was going to be sold to pay for some of what is happening in Concord. And there was enough advocacy on the part of some DAC members and some residents in that sub area so that got taken off the table and it's now on a capital projects list, even though it's on hold.
It's a great reflection. Okay, we're gonna move on in the agenda, but I want you to keep reflecting on the findings that I've shared with you. And if you have any clarifying questions, find me during the break. Otherwise, we're gonna keep on moving through the back. Or just.
Thank you. So, our next item is our system plan phase 3 and phase 4 update. And thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I think this is.
Could you remind me of your name? I'm sorry.
Yes. I'm Anna Laymore with Design Workshop, and with me is Jen on the call. And we're happy to be back for, I believe this is our 5th time presenting to you all and learning from you in these meetings of updating about the system plan. So thank you for having us. I'm gonna share screen here.
And while Anna is pulling that up, just a quick note, we've tried to give updates as frequently as we could on what's going on with the system plan, so the DAC is up to speed, so this is one of a number of different presentations. But since we spoke with you all last, a lot of work has happened. So you're gonna see a lot of content up here. In terms of what we're looking for feedback on this evening, would really like to focus your energies on the mission and vision statement that's in here, what's resonating well, and what might be giving you some heartburn, what do we need to take another look at? And similarly, themes, and just to acknowledge that we even had a staff working session for most of today, that my voice is very hoarse at this point, and I may start coughing at any second as a result. Lots of talking. To review the draft goals and strategies, and a lot of that is still very much in motion. We're still workshopping all of that, so nothing is finalized. There's still an opportunity for input, but we just ask that the input that you provide is very specific and very actionable, so that we can weave that into our next iteration process as we revise the materials.
There. All right. So what we'll cover is a little bit of an update of what we learned in 2024, listening to the community, doing a lot of outreach, as well as the analysis that was completed. We'll just do a recap of many of those things that we've shared with you previously in summary. But what we're going to focus our time on is the vision and goals for this plan that are informed from that. This is our initial take, which was recently shared with the public through engagement, and we're just sharing that with you here formally, as well as a diagram that's helping us to explain that vision that was shared with the public as well. And then we'll talk about when it comes to action items and investments going forward. As you recall, this plan is not a mandate. It is not a promise to the community, but it is to identify those key values and objectives going forward of what at this moment in hearing from the community and in doing the analysis we see are the top level things that need to be addressed. And so with that, there's flexibility, but we'll have action items that really clarify what and how will be done. And so we want to share that with you of how we're working through evaluating what is the top of the list. And then we'll talk about next steps moving into the draft plan creation and then adoption. So where we're at in the timeline, you can see the times that we all have met and presented to DAC here highlighted. Much of it was in those first steps about the current conditions assessment and establishing community agreements through a number of different engagement points. Then we checked in with you all before we started developing the plan and sharing that with the community. And now we're at the stage at the later end of developing the plan to then share a draft with you soon and the final plan later this summer. And I was going to say that as well, for that adoption process, remember that late springs, early summer is the goal for sharing this out with the community through public review, the draft plan. And that's when you will also have an opportunity to review the plan in detail, all the words, because tonight is just going to be high level, but you'll review all the words and provide your comments at that point. And you'll provide after that your recommendation to the board regarding plan adoption. So a little bit on what we've learned in 2024 in developing this plan. You'll recall a whole variety of ways that we reached out to the community and heard from a diversity of folks, really thinking about who do we typically not hear from, all the different geographies of the community, and also all the different ways people use parks and recreation. So that was really a key thing in all the different methods that were used to do outreach. And you'll remember that all best practices and more were used and doing that outreach and sending it to people. And really the response rate has been excellent. It's one where we really believe that you can rely on the results of the survey representative of the community. 2,262 survey responses is no small thing for a community of this size. And with that, we have a lot of understanding of their values, their desires, their priorities. Really one of the best systems for doing that is through that type of survey, but also augmented by hearing from those that we often need more discussion and dialogue with and are underrepresented in those efforts. So that's why the focus groups, the tabling events, presentations to community organizations, all that took place as well in order to make sure we're hearing from the wide variety of voices in the community about needs and desires for parks and recreation. And you'll recall in many of our presentations, we shared maps and analysis, a lot of benchmarking, comparing you to other districts and other geographies of how are you doing? What do your finances look like? How do you compare in staff? How do you compare in the number of parks you have, their distribution, the conditions, their qualities, and how are you really serving the community? So that analysis is part of that weaving in to create these next step of the strategies that are in the plan. They're really informed from a lot of data, both from the community and their values, as well as data that we are able to collect and evaluate about your system. So I think the most recent one that we've added to this was the conclusion to the quality assessment of spaces. You might remember there was a conditional assessment that staff conducted to look at what condition are elements in. Are they poor to great quality? Are they in disarray and broken, or are they excellent and just recently replaced? That assessment was done by staff. But the other one that was done was going out to all these locations, and for folks that are representative of the community volunteered, as well as some youth who were paid to go out and determine, but how is it working for people? How does it feel? What are some of the items that make you feel like there are a lot of people here, for example? Or what are the things that make you feel safe in this environment? Things that are harder to quantify, they did assess and put numbers to them. So that will also inform this understanding, which is then makes it even more robust in understanding the strengths and weaknesses of your offerings today. So next is this development of the vision and goals for the system plan. And this is very much informed by the work that's been done in that analysis and the community input in developing this. We've been working with staff back and forth, working through the different statements that we're about to share. And in fact, there's more done today. And so these will likely shift as well. But what I want to share with you is that a plan is set up with a framework to it, where it moves from a hierarchy of very general ideas down to more specifics of the how. So we start off with a plan vision. What do we want to become in 20 years? And describe that. We move then into themes that support the vision. These are the themes that are what we aspire to, and it organizes the principles of the future goals. Themes are a focus. They give direction for the next 20 years. They're not the everything of what you do in your mission, but they help you clarify, this is what we need to work on. The goals then are something you can help to use to track your progress towards an outcome you're looking for. What are you trying to achieve? The strategies are, so what are we going to do about it? It's the what and the how. And then the actions are things that staff and others will do to implement the plan. It will be the steps that they take. Does that all make sense for a framework? Okay. The next thing is what we're going to want your input on, but I'm going to ask that you wait with comments or questions until the end so I can go through all of the components, because they may inform each other. There's a lot of overlap and tension between them, and I want you to see them all before we jump into that discussion. So the first bit of this is the mission and vision of your district. So 2015 had this mission to enrich community vitality and promote healthy living through parks and recreation. You'll notice what we've drafted now is just a slight modification based off of the community input received. To enrich community vitality and promote healthy living through connections to nature and play. Okay. So a slight change there for your department, North Clackamas Parks and Recreation district mission. The vision then in 2015 was enhancing and connecting your community by providing exceptional parks and recreation opportunities for all. And the plan vision is just a slight modification on that based off of some input received of enhancing community with exceptional parks, natural areas, and recreational opportunities that welcome all. So certainly looking at the end of this, if you have some input on those mission and vision statements, which I'm sure you're familiar with previous ones, and these are just a slight variation to them that's suggested. And then the proposed themes. As I mentioned, these are the heart of the plan that help organize. If you're going to say to someone, this plan is about 4 things, this is it. Okay, so 4 things our focus on care for and invest in parks and recreation. And I think that the comment that came up earlier of, you know, what is needed of us, that part of understanding how to get the community to invest is a really key piece of what is needed to invest and what does it mean to take care of this, be stewards, but also think long-term about what you're gonna need to care for it in the, not just today, but in the future. The second one is connect to nature. That was a really common theme within the survey comments. It was really amazing how many people really identified with North Clackamas Parks and Recreation because of being outdoors in nature, those aspects of just where you live. So that is why that was one of the key themes and has a number of supporting elements. The third one is play for all. And we'll go into more of what that one means, but there was a key focus on everyone should be enjoying these as a valuable way of how we play, how we enjoy these spaces and our programs. And then lastly, enrich our community. That recreation and parks is an essential element of lives, and it can do more. There are many ways it can expand and improve people's lives. So I'll go over each one of these of what are the aspirational statements that support them, and then what are the goals and just a few examples of strategies that will give you an idea of the intent of the direction this is going. So the first one, care and invest in parks and recreation. The aspiration is care for our existing system while providing a strong foundation for future opportunities. We want that aspiration statement to be flexible enough that you would accomplish it in many ways over time. But one that you really can see the vision of, can we get there? What does it look like? So I'll continue to read you here. Goal 1 is prioritize investments and improvements in areas of high community need. 2, strengthen partnerships and interdepartmental collaboration. 3, care for what we have now while also looking towards expanding offerings and access over the next decade. And 4, ensure quality and longevity of the parks and recreation system through long-term fiscal sustainability of the district. Now note, these are not in any particular order. They're not intended to be a sequence of things. We just need to put some sort of strategy around them. So then how do you accomplish these goals? Those are supported by strategies. And here we've just summarized the strategies. At this point, they're much more lengthy. You can see them up on boards here. We're working through that right now, how to communicate these in a way that's succinct. But just some examples here, the summary of the strategies. I'm just going to pull out number 2 under this goal 2 about strengthening partnerships and interdepartmental collaboration as an example of how this will look in the plan. Align with nonprofit community formed organizations such as Park Conservancy. And so with that, this is a more detailed strategy of how you would align with them, that the Park Conservancy or a foundation would act as an advocate for the district. It would grow and take on more responsibilities over time. That might include things like offering scholarships and fundraising and all different components of advocating for parks and recreation in ways that a governmental entity cannot, that they can be set up for that. You might recall there is one for the community center that their role could certainly expand, or you could look to others to provide that. So, or build a new strategy around it. So that's just an example of how the strategies will appear in the plan to help support these broader goals. So tonight we look for your feedback before you move into that next stage of drafting the plan, before you see it all together in one place. If there's anything regarding the goals and the themes that you'd like to see adjusted or would work differently. So the next one I'll share from the highlights is around funding, goal 4 under this theme. Ensure quality and longevity of the parks and recreation system through long-term fiscal sustainability of the district. And of course, as you know with that, a key one is pursuing additional funding sources. And this one is pursue increasing funding sources, including property tax increase. A really critical one I know you've had your eye on for some time of that need, and I know we'll talk about that a bit more later on. Okay, number 2, connect to nature. This aspiration is to connect to nature, embracing and protecting natural resources and mitigating climate change impacts. So we look to an increased community access to the outdoors, nature, and water, create a district-wide network of trails to enhance movement, connectivity, and enjoyment in the natural environment. Connect people to natural places and their restorative benefits. Foster a sense of curiosity and stewardship for nature through enhanced signage, access, and learning opportunities in the district. And enhance community resilience through climate adapted landscapes, facilities, and program offerings. So an example of a strategy under this goal would be to connect people to destinations through a trail network. And going on to say why that's important for safety, accessibility, making easily navigable and well-connected trail network. Theme 3, play for all. The aspiration here is to promote health and lifelong learning by providing parks, natural areas, facilities, and recreation opportunities for all ages and abilities. So that includes providing recreation programs and places to play that meet the needs of a broad range of ages, abilities, and backgrounds. Reduce gaps in park access and programming using a variety of tools and resources in the community. Offer affordable recreation programs and facilities to encourage participation and reduce financial barriers. And provide ongoing communications to meet community needs and proactively follow national trends. An example of a strategy under this is to offer programs for all age groups that are often overlooked. And when we did our examination through that analysis, the key ones that were not being addressed as fully were teens, young adults, professionals, and family programs that are for a variety of ages together. Those were the ones that in the benchmarking as well, comparing to other communities, many of them were providing this and was a gap that we could provide. And we would note that this needs to happen in relationship to your facilities, many of them indoor, and your staff. So these are tied together with some other objectives of how you get there. Fourth and last is enrich our community. The aspiration here is to strengthen connections through events, activities, recreation programs, and communication that celebrate the diversity of identities in our community. So that includes to celebrate and honor cultures, languages, storytelling, art, and history of distinct communities in North Clackamas. Create community togetherness and foster welcoming environments through recreational and cultural offerings in parks, recreation and programs, facilities and programs. Craft programs and partnerships that support health of residents through recreation programs and events. And adapt recreation activities and events to meet the current and future recreation needs of the community. An example here would be to develop partnerships with community organizations, healthcare providers, and disability advocacy groups to facilitate development of targeted programs and initiatives tailored to meet the needs of specific demographic segments. We heard that quite a bit within the focus groups, that takeaway of that needs to be a focus for the development of those spaces, as well as through a number of comments with those who are evaluating different spaces and taking a look at their quality. So in support of the vision and goals, we're doing something that isn't in all plans of this type, but can be very helpful when you're trying to create a sense of a physical vision for what could happen. How would we see physically our places transform? And so with that, you remember from one piece of the assessment, there was this piece about the gaps in service. Looking at the park access gaps, where can people not walk to a park within a 10-minute distance from their home? Where are those gaps in connectivity? Plus, the environmental justice priority zones, looking at areas with social, environmental, and health impacts, and evaluating those areas of having higher need for those populations. Residential density, knowing that we should serve those areas where there are more people and the areas where it's mostly industrial. Probably should look at those so carefully. And then prioritizing also those things all together of the high needs overlay areas. So you see that map on the far right is that overlay of all those components. And then what emerges the most of those components all together is the pink in this map of the priority areas for increasing service, plus the priority areas for enhancing connectivity. And I'll go over a little bit more what those mean, but this was a background to the map that was shared with the public that I hope you all got onto that mapping online and took part in that input sharing. So this was in the background for people to reflect and say, oh, do I want to direct some of my action items and the investment pieces to those locations because they've been identified as higher need. So that pink and that brown areas, you can see the relationship to your current and in progress facilities of how those are located. And that makes us think about, well, are they all in places that are addressing, are those gaps things we need to fill? Or are there some parts in those locations that could be enhanced and better serve those areas, the other components? So you might recall from January 24th to February 28th, we had over a month of input on this online engagement tool, and it was advertised through a variety of ways, email blasts, all those names being collected through the survey and other means, pop-up events, going out to people, meeting with them where they're at and promoting their use of providing their input, as well as social media posts. So during that time, we received over 164 contributions to this map with their people's input. And with that, they went onto many of those locations and told us, do they favor these ideas or not? And thumbs up or thumbs down to those ideas that were put out there. With that, February 28th, it's not too long ago, so I do not have a summary tonight of all the findings. We'll be wrapping that up shortly, but that will be a next step, is to inform this vision map. So tonight, what I'll have to share is more of a draft of what we shared with the public, not an update to it. So what went into that was these 4 categories for the vision map of this diagram. One was enhanced play and recreation, locations for enhanced access to nature, locations for enhanced access to water, for active recreation, and trail improvement opportunities. Those were some key things that we could put into categories and say that's kind of the key element of this idea of this improvement. And those were created first and foremost from the previous community input. We went back and looked at what people had suggested, what they were looking for, their interests, as well as that assessment that we had about quality, conditions, about the recreation trends, what does the data show us people may be looking for in the future, as well as operations, maintenance, and programming assessments, all went into informing this first round of identified areas for enhancement and opportunities. The next step, so this is not intended to be that yet, is prioritizing action items and capital improvement projects. So by no means a promise there. But I wanted to go over what these enhancement opportunities ended up looking like, based on that feedback that we received of what they'd like to see over the next 20 years and what we believe would really enhance your system. The enhanced play and recreation focuses on play areas, play structures, community gathering areas, sports fields, and event spaces, and more. I wanted to address a comment about it does not include adding to your indoor community centers new locations. We've looked at that, and they're located, those 3 that you have are located distributed well as we use ratios about the number of people per space. And at this point, you usually would need at least 50,000 to be a viable financial investment to add another community center. And so you're not at that mark, given that you have 3 facilities. However, your facilities all have room for improvement. They all should be, we're going to be making recommendations about how they all should be assessed for how they could do more in their current spaces or be expanded. That is a really key opportunity. You've already invested so much into these spaces, they really could provide a greater value to the community. But as far as their locations throughout the district, that's something to look at when it comes to driving distance rather than walking. So that's why under play and recreation, these are the key things that we know. Many of them, you haven't had funding to replace ones that are deficient. There's a backlog of investment needs there, as well as opportunities and locations to really enhance or add to them. Enhance access to water for active recreation. This includes your natural water as well as water play-based activities that might be splash pads and things, but we're really looking at the fact that you have this incredible amenity the community really values, which is you have waterways. You could do more with people being able to view them. It's not all about getting in the water and recreating in it. Much of it is about people's appreciation of being in a place that has an abundance of water and wanting to experience that more. The next one is enhanced access to nature. So this one's a little different of, you do have a number of incredible habitats, wildlife viewing opportunities, but there is more out there of the opportunities for education and really enhancement of those natural areas. You're just kind of scratching the surface right now of caring for your current natural assets, as well as what you could do for your spaces to better bring nature into people's lives for both environmental and health ramifications. The next one is trail improvement opportunities. Your district doesn't have that many or that lengthy of regional trails that are interconnected and really bring people in throughout. There's certainly opportunity for improvement there, but also how do people safely travel to these stations and how do they learn about them and how do they make this part of their recreation opportunities? So we've got a work in progress of what we shared with the community that input just ended. And we'll be updating this with those comments from them, as well as building off of some additional opportunities that we're seeing with these ideas about enhancing play and recreation. We're building into this the action plans of how do we get there, how do we create this and prioritize when we could invest. So now I'll go over what are some of those things and how are we prioritizing, what are the criteria for those action plans. Because as you can see from the strategies, they're a little bit high level, but general enough that there might be many ways you would address them. The strategies may need to adjust over time based off of you might accomplish something, and so that one's met. The action items help support that. So the first key piece of this is an evaluation of your current funding. And this slide was shared with you all in a previous meeting. Just recently, you might remember that aspect of the 2025 to 2026 budget update was presented in February at this meeting. And it pointed out that the tax rate is extremely low relative to other districts. And you don't have additional funding sources to tap into that would make a difference. And I will just point out, this is such a critical component of what you as a DAC, what staff, what this plan is intended to do is communicate out. This vision isn't because we have this abundance of money to spend and we don't know what to do with it. This vision plan is intended because we need a focused effort. We need to communicate the deficiencies we have. We need to understand people's values of where we put the money. And we need alignment about this vision. If we don't give people something that they can see and hope for, they don't know what's possible and what to ask for. So this gives you your point to ask and say, would you be interested in these things that we've heard from the community they wanted to see in the future? Would you be interested in funding it? And as you recall from the survey, there was strong support for moving forward with that idea of funding. Pursuing that. So a number of points on that of just the insufficiency right now, just even continue doing what you're doing. It's going to be further tightening of the belt and to the point where your operations and maintenance funding is insufficient as well. Because as you'll probably recall, the general funds for operations and maintenance and programming services is a limitation. Its current tax rate isn't keeping pace with inflation. There are rising operational costs, as you know, these things are not stagnant. And the system development changes are a separate funding source that can only be used for new development and amenities. So when people get that shiny new thing, they think, oh, we must be doing well. You are for that, but you can't tap into those funds for the long-term care of your system as part of the challenge. So those are sobering thoughts in this, but I think that's where communicating that we do have a vision, we do know what money we need in order to keep operating, helps people get behind it. So we look forward to sharing that draft plan and expressing those needs and also in creating a vision that people can understand, get behind and see within it for them. I think between the vision map and the variety of strategies, we've tried to craft a plan that has something for everyone in it. And it will take a long time to get there. It's not a promise of this will happen tomorrow. It's a 20-year plan of overall, what are we trying to be? What do we want to accomplish? So with that, I'll go back to just some next steps, and then we'll go back and review and see what comments you have for us about the mission, vision, and the themes. So next step is, staff is working now through all of that part of prioritizing action items based on those different criteria. One of those criteria would be, do we have funding for this? Yes or no? Will we have funding for this? And then developing that timeline based on what could happen with additional funding and what could happen with the staff you have now versus if you needing to add staff. Next up in early summer, will be the public review of the draft plan. So that will be a document that gets shared out that has all the analysis, all the input from the community, as well as this overall vision for them to understand and supporting this action items within it. And then late summer, going for final plan and adoption process. Right. So with that, we'll go back to see what comments or questions you may have for us around. First, let's start with the mission and vision, and then we'll move into the themes. Any comments on it?
Yeah, anytime. And I also want to offer a framework for how we think about sharing feedback. So when we're looking at this mission and vision statement, think to yourself, you know, is any of this giving me pause and why? And if it is giving me pause, how might I improve it without wordsmithing? So what are kind of undertones or, you know, more global language that you would like to see introduced or up for consideration so that we don't spend time nitpicking on specific words? But keep that hand raised. I still want to hear it.
I'm not there. But, yeah, I was just pleased that, like, in both the mission, the district mission and the plan vision, the two things that were added have to do with nature. As you were saying before, and I guess that's based on the fact that so many people give input to that.
Right.
Point it out, I like it.
Right.
Other thoughts or comments? Yeah, Joel.
I'm just gonna do a simple positive one. I like them as written. I think they're great.
A thumbs up, is always helpful.
Jessica, is there any chat in the, anybody asking to speak on Zoom? Okay, no, no, it's time to.
No.
No.
Grover?
Yeah, I appreciate the tone of most of them, and on this particular page, my only thought is about the opportunity that welcomes all as opposed to is available to all, because where we had it before is the idea to connect and whatever. And I loved to tie the pieces together when you showed all the places that don't have parks. And so it's a great distance for them to get somewhere. So I think available to all would be something to worth considering as opposed to welcome. There's no one's, you know, you're not allowed here. They're all set up to be welcome. So that was my comment. Thanks.
Thanks, Grover. Ally?
Yeah, so actually mine's similar to Grover's comment. One thing that kind of caught my eye is I really do like the idea of the welcome all or available to all, but I'm also just wondering about maybe providing more inclusive language just so that we can also consider people of all abilities. Specifically trying to, when we are moving forward with park design, taking into consideration our members that have different abilities, whether that is mobile abilities, physical abilities, you know, people who experience or live with the autism or on the spectrum, something that just kind of makes it a little bit more pointed or specific, that it is more inclusive of all people.
That's great feedback. Thanks, Ally. Other feedback, needs for clarification or questions? Yes.
Yeah, I just have and I don't disagree with anything that's been said, but taking the words parks and recreation out of those, I'm just wondering if we thought about that from a marketing standpoint, that comes to the point of going to the voters for an increase in funding, that the mission speaks to the voters in a way that is clear, right? So I'm just thinking ahead, from a marketing standpoint, what can we do to enhance the mission of the district related to the ask of the voters for more funding?
Any thoughts from around the table? I think that's quite interesting. Grover, you still have your.
Yeah, so I just want to say what a tremendous amount of work and thought has gone into this. I mean, really, the process and stuff is incredible, the product that you've done. What I'm thinking about, which may really have nothing to do with the way this is written, is that, you know, in unincorporated Clackamas County, one of the issues that I see is that we're not communities. You know, we haven't, you know, where I live, there's not a gathering place. So when we talk about enriching community and enhancing community, one of the reasons that I will, you know, advocate for some type of park in our area is to create. And so I'm just making that comment. I just, you know, in reading that, I just happen to feel like. That's great, you know, anyway.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes we're leading with assumptions and not recognizing there's a little bit of erasure happening for some sub areas
Yeah,
that don't have.
And I don't know if other unincorporated areas, and you know, we've got Oak Grove, I mean, there's places with names to them. Anyway,
Yeah, it's great, very good insight.
Yeah, if I may, just because I really like, I've never considered it that way, but I like the idea, like you said, you're looking at it from, this is an opportunity to create that, to create support for, I mean, at least the vision as it's written, but yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Parks provide a
Yeah.
gathering spot.
Yeah.
And, you know, in our area, we don't have that.
And just as even from a marketing standpoint, even, as Paul said, an opportunity to address those deficiencies.
Right.
With the vision is kind of it's like more ammunition for why there's a need for this sort of thing.
Right.
So that's really interesting. I'm glad you said that.
Yeah, what's the incentive, right,
Mhm.
for voters?
For sure.
To engage in placemaking.
Yeah. Oh, I
Community
like that.
building, is interesting, right? Great insights, y'all. Other thoughts? Feedback?
So there's just two of these. I see one being a district
There's
and one being a plan. There's no other mission.
No, there's, no, the district mission and the plan vision are those overarching statements. The district mission is more capturing what as an organization you do, and the vision for the plan is the focus of what this next 20 years will need to unfold. On to the next piece, wanted to get input from you all. First of all, this is I think your first time, other than through the taking, if you went online and saw the participation survey, of really seeing this unfolding other people's themes. And I wanted to know, first of all, was there anything in it that excited you? The reason I'm asking that is because we will need to share this with the community in a way that we feel like there's something in it for everyone. There's something that excited them, but also in a way that we can make it understandable. So what are the things that you kind of, you latch onto and say, oh, that's something where, as a key message of what we want to share with the public about what we're to do. So I wanted to leave it here and see, is there anything in what I went through that series of slides, under these things, what jumped out to you as you're excited to see this as a part of the plan?
So to emphasize this and connect this directly to your work, as you're in community, sharing and building awareness about this systems plan, what are the key messages? What are the things that resonate most with you that then you can share with community to help them understand how important this is and what the call to action may be, particularly for those that will be voting. So it's connecting back to like why you're here in the first place. What about this and the proposed themes makes you excited?
Also, the thing you think will be most helpful going forward.
Go ahead, Grover.
Well, mine's actually a question. I'm on theme 1, and it's goal 2. And when it says strengthen partnerships and interdepartmental collaboration, what is interdepartmental referring to in specific?
So that's more around the idea of, let's see if I have that one in here. This would be an example. So work with the Milwaukee Center Foundation, also your internal departments of all the, from maintenance to your programs and your program partners. It's your staff throughout.
Yeah, and I would add, I think part of the intent with that was looking at collaboration with other agencies, right, within the county. So how do we partner with DTD, for example, on roadway improvements that might complete our trail network system? As well as better collaboration amongst the departments within NCPRD, so that we're looking for win-win solutions that work for planning and for rec and for maintenance and operations. So kind of all across the board, opportunities for more of that collaboration.
Does that answer your question, Grover?
It does. I would actually search for a different word, because departmental to me mostly keeps it within NCPRD as opposed to
Like
across.
interagency or something like that?
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
I think a different word would be more inclusive. Cause you did use as your example, something that wasn't a department of NCPRD and departmental.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that was my
Yeah.
question about that. I think it's, and then the other on goal 1, it says prioritizing investments. And I love it. So this is going to be that prioritizing investment directly correlates to the map with all the pink stuff on it in sub area 3 and 4 and a little bit into sub area 1, which is the most underserved areas. And that this is a commitment to look to that work and,
Yeah, so the
and
strategies and the action items will spell those out more specifically in addition to the map.
great.
Any other questions, Grover, or feedback? No, I just want to make sure. Yeah.
Well, I actually want to give kudos, the one on, goal 4, you don't have to go through it, but it talks about pursue increased NCPRD funding and sources. I cheer every time I see what the staff has done as far as finding another place for a grant or a connection or a partnership, so. Staff, great job, I mean, that is clearly taking what we have and looking outside of the normal coffers as places to do, and I greatly appreciate that, so, thanks,
Thanks, Grover.
thank you.
Yeah, I'm still really resonating with what Sheila said about creating community, building community, not just enriching it, but being the cause of it. And I think so maybe the wording there could be build community or enrich and build community. Or something. I think that was a really excellent insight. Great. Dan?
Yeah, on that second theme for connect to nature, I really like goal 4, that foster a sense of curiosity and stewardship for nature during the path. Am I reading the wrong one? No. Through enhanced signage, access and learning opportunities in the district, and kind of, like the same thing, building the community. I almost wanted to say connect to each other through nature, but I don't know if that was corny or it's vague or messing it up, so don't blame me for wordsmithing. But yeah, like the reason that Maureen's, one of the reasons I was talking to Maureen, my role previously was because I was just picking up trash by the park. It's like the gateway drug to. It's like the little opportunities for stewardship and things like that.
I love that. That's great. That ties it back to community, right? Why we do it in the first place. Great. Any other thoughts? Awesome, thank you. What is Sheila for?
I just want to say, I'm excited about it. You know, I have to say, you know, enrich our community, I wasn't exactly sure what that one meant, but when I got into the greater explanation, just excellent. I mean, it's just, to me, these 4 things are all very exciting.
Grover, did you have additional?
Yeah, a couple of, right off the one that Daniel just spoke of, on number 5 there, I really appreciated what he did on 4, but then on 5 is the enhanced community resilience through climate adapted landscape facilities and program offerings. Because of all the fires that are happening, all the kinds of things if we could have more of a focus to include people in programs, residents to learn more about doing pollinator planting and or how to, without using fertilizer and DDT, et cetera, or Roundup, you could actually work on, so parks is paralleling what people do in their yards, et cetera, and to have a chance for people to come and learn and use the parks as a place for them to have those program offerings I think would be awesome, and that's right in there, so I just wanted to say kudos on that.
Great.
Um,
Any other thoughts or comments? Yeah, Jim.
Yeah, quick one. Looking at theme 4 and then goal 3. Which is crafting programs and partnerships to support the health of residents through recreation programs and events. I really like the strategy with support a culture of volunteerism, and that led to my question, how can the DAC help? I think it's a great way to plug in.
So I'm an avid crafter, and I have to say, when I read Goal 3, I saw the craft program.
Sheila, are you offering to teach?
Right, exactly. Actually, that's the program.
There are things under programming there that you'll see that we were mentioning, that the arts and crafts and those programs and classes are a gap in what you offer now. You also don't have facilities that exactly lend themselves to that, or staff to run them, or volunteers to teach them. And so that falls under some other things, but it's true. I think there are others who would be excited for that. And so it's partly a piece of the vision of, yes, how are some other programs helping support this?
Yeah, one other thing back to marketing and knowing, again, we're gonna try to go out to the voters to increase the funding is that, again, I see mission, vision, themes. So I just wondered if there's anything in the works that speaks to growing the number of parks in areas where it's sparse, right? Some messaging that says that is part of our mission. We are going to do this when, obviously, when funding is available. Something that's short and sweet, but I don't know where to plug it in, but I just wanted to mention that.
That is under the first one. Care and invest in parks and recreation. So that is looking at prioritizing first, do you already own a property that's in one of those ideal locations that's underserved that needs to be built out? And then secondly, if you don't, what can we do to either partner or create that? And so the fact that you do have funding for new things, that is one pot you can pull from. Let's work through priorities. That is a key piece of this. So the strategies to support that idea. I just didn't share it today of all the strategies that are under those ones, but you can see that example of investments in communities of high need as well as in those gap areas.
Do you feel like it needs to be more pronounced?
Well, I think more pronounced of that, we're gonna grow the number of them or the access to them. I mean, something, I don't know, I'm just throwing that out there. I mean, a lot of good heads, a lot of good, I love the positive spirit we're all speaking of, but something that kind of says that's gonna be I assume it's our goal, right?
It is, but it is not the top thing.
Okay.
What came up from the community input and also what came up from our assessment about where you're at, you have to take care of what you have. Sure. Before you build the system bigger, you have to. And so it is one thing that we aren't expanding on it to say like, look all the new things you're gonna get. Look at all these new places that are gonna show up. Because honestly, without funding, you're gonna continue, your standard of care is gonna continue to diminish.
I'm just trying to plant the seed. So how we all work with it, I'm good with.
Yeah, maybe that's the long range vision,
Yeah.
right, that we need to be articulating to community over time, your key messaging. So that folks do understand that that is part of the larger vision of the priorities to take care of what we have in the near term.
I heard what Sheila said, and it stuck out to me. It wasn't clear to me.
Yeah.
So when she said it wasn't clear to me, is it gonna be clear to anyone in the future?
Exactly, yeah.
So that I just want to just build on her observation.
I think accessibility in terms of the language that we're using is really important when you think about community, because prioritized investments can mean a lot of different things for a lot of different people. So you might want to be a little bit more clear about what that means in this context. Lisa?
I mean, I do agree. I guess, there's a fundamental question I have about, but picking up on Director Salas's point, I mean, I do agree that this isn't the language that sells about.
No.
You know, and maybe it's not supposed to be, right? It's the plan, and then there's a second thing of taking that plan to a ballot measure, right? So it's, we're gonna bring you X, we're gonna replace 15 playgrounds, and we're gonna bring you X acres of big parks, and, you know, I mean, I think we will have to have those kind of things, so talking about it. I will just say, I mean, I think it all looks good. I still am, and I spent some time digging into to the document online about the survey. And I mean, I know you guys did a ton of outreach, but I still feel like, and I expressed this last fall, I still feel like we didn't hear, I mean, what we see in that results are inconsistent with what I hear from people when it comes to active and sports uses. And I would cite the letter we got recently from the soccer, the guy from the soccer league, and he told me there were some others coming in from soccer leagues. I don't know if we've gotten any others, but
Got one other.
I do feel like, I mean, I hear all the time, splash pads, dog parks, skate parks. I didn't see skate parks anywhere. Pickleball courts. I mean, those are the things I hear sort of most commonly. As an outdoor swimming pool here and there occasionally comes up. So I guess I do feel like, to me, that's what feels like is missing here. And I don't know. Yes, I don't know. I feel like our survey skewed older. And it's the people who do use the park, who do come out to events like we've had at the, you know, Milwaukee Center and everything. That is a population that skews older, but I worry that we're not getting the needs of young families and young cats.
Yeah, yeah, we do. And in addition to that, to understand the demographics of who we heard from, we also did focus groups so that those user groups like the sports groups could be heard. Sports groups tend to be the loudest voices in processes like this. They know how to advocate. They can share with you their data about where they're under overcapacity and field uses. And then we can work with them on like, okay, well, where? And can things like adding lights extend the hours? And do you have a shared use agreement with the school? Like there's other things to work through in that. But they tend to be the louder voices of why you sometimes hear from them. They have certain needs that they want met in a certain way. And we also look to how the quality assessments of going out to the spaces and saying, are these meeting needs of these groups, or are some of the facilities deficient? Do we need to invest more in some of our fields, our courts, our skate parks, so on?
Zero.
Yeah, skate parks, yeah.
Zero.
Yeah, skate parks, is that something that's being met elsewhere, or is this a high need in our community? And where is that demand coming from? So, yeah, it's important to continue to connect into that. I would say this plan is having it has a lot of priorities. There are a lot of investments that they've identified in this to be made.
I do want to say that you emphasizing like the need to ensure that we're hearing from different demographics is, I think, a part of when we think about the role of DAC members. So how can we close that information gap? If you think that it exists, I think we need to check the data, right, to see how many young folks, right, we did talk to through focus groups or other engagement activities. But if that feels still like a thread that you want to pull, that is where DAC members can use your role to say, is there ways that I can tap back into community to confirm or affirm what I think I'm hearing in different pockets that is maybe not showing up in this plan explicitly, and then, you know, really engaging in the trade-offs of like, we have a lot of priorities existing already. How do we make sure that that voice is not lost, but that it's placed strategically amongst the other priorities? I want DAC members to think about the role of that.
This Play for All is where some of those strategies come in under the reduce gaps in park access and programming, using all those tools and resources in the community, and looking at also that piece on all ages, abilities, and backgrounds.
Mayor Beatty, your comment also reminded me that we did an additional outreach measure even while we were doing a survey of the vote dot exercises right on site. And we actually had a lot of kids participate in that. We had a lot of youth and family participation in that process. And some of the specific uses, maybe sports aside, that you just referenced, like pickleball and dog parks, skate parks, we also heard a lot about mini golf. Which is unexpected. So there were some other use types that we heard a lot about that got a lot of sticker votes, and maybe we need to go back and take another look at those and take a look at these through the lens of that vote dot exercise, because I think some of that was captured there too.
Okay, well, I appreciate that. And I will note, I'm looking at page 16 of the survey result document, and it has all these questions, figure 8. When so much of the survey is all about demographics and who people were, and the actual meat of what the questions were is only a couple pages in here. And so this figure 8, priorities for investments in parks and facilities, really just has, increase small neighborhood park, an increased number of small neighborhood parks, increase number of larger parks, but then it like lumps amenities all into one question. Add or replace significant outdoor amenities such as outdoor pool, amphitheater, pavilion, sports fields, etc. I guess I'm worried that we didn't ask the questions in ways that people got to identify what they feel is missing.
And I'm not sure which document you're looking at there, but we should probably look back at it. It may be that
Sure,
your
August
session.
2024, it's sort of like 120 page survey result.
Okay, it is the one lengthier one.
Yeah.
Okay. If it would be helpful to have some more time going over those survey results, as we mentioned, it's just one of the needs that we're tracking. What are we hearing for input? A survey,
I guess I'd like to see how the questions were asked, and maybe it's in
it
here.
may be at the very end of it, of how the actual survey form of what was completed there, but. Yeah, if there's something we need to do, spend a little more time looking through the surveys and their responses, we can take a look at that as what that looks like, but I think the key thing is, what are you getting in the plan? Is it excluding something that we heard significant interest in, or that was meeting certain needs of people that are often overlooked, or that we really need to emphasize what is in this plan for them? And as we've mentioned, youth is a component that we're seeing some needs for different ages of their interests be addressed. Let's make sure we have strategies that help them get at that, because no surveys can be perfect or ask every question we would want to have answered, or have every person respond that we want to have respond. So we need to make what we can out of it to get a plan that gives clear direction.
Okay, I want to do a time check at 6:53. Kia, I see you have your name tag up, and then let's make sure we have enough time for public.
So thank you. I just wanted to acknowledge that, I'm really glad you brought this topic up, Mayor Maybe, because although we did have a statistically valid sample with our survey, and we were quite pleased with the number of respondents, it is likely that the respondents skewed older because they tend to have more time than folks that have families and jobs. And that is, I say that because we're seeing that with a lot of our community engagement. The families have difficulties showing up because they're so busy, but it doesn't mean that they don't need our parks and facilities. So I would also like to just make a note for our team that when we go out to do community engagement for new parks and facilities, that we are just mindful of meeting people where they are. And I think a great example was for the last Jennings Lodge community open house, we actually had it at the site where there actually were a lot of children and families. So we'll just try to really drive towards including that group in a way that makes it engagement more accessible to them. And I would also say too, that from my perspective, a best practice of a Parks and Recreation district or a department within a city would be that you have a broad range of amenities throughout the community. So that maybe there is an skate park in your neighborhood, but there is a skate park that's relatively close by. So, so we are looking at that and really talking about that as staff, that we really need a broader range of amenity types within our district to serve a broader community. So even if we're not hearing that, dog parks are at the top, well, we have one off-leash dog area, and given that we serve a little over 100,000 people, I think it's pretty safe guess that we need to invest in that type of amenity. So thank you for bringing that up. I just want to tell you, it's really top of mind from the staff perspective, and we'll try to find a way to drive to some results that provide that broader range of amenities for the community.
Yeah, just like I had my hand up for the same reason, the time check. We're about 10 to 15 minutes behind. We could do a show of thumbs up or thumbs down if we want to try to fulfill all the agenda items, or do we want to try to rush out of here and just get to public comment? My preference would be to try to work through the agenda.
How do others feel?
I was gonna say, could we possibly do public comment in a different order so that if anyone has come to speak, they're not delayed in their time?
That's an incredible suggestion. Any objections to that? Okay. I will now open the floor for public comment. Do we have any cards? Public cards today? This is where I'm calling for statements from community members. Are there any folks on Zoom? Making eye contact in the gallery? Thank you. I will now close the public comment.
Any further reflections? We will be moving into, as we said, to the draft plan. So if there is anything that is giving you pause or saying, hey, I want you all to take a look at this before you give us a draft plan that is shared with the public, please be in touch with the staff and let them know. This is where we're at in this working stage, and is a check-in before we move to that stage of having a draft plan that you will then provide your comments to. That's your chance to wordsmith. That's your chance to give us your attention to certain things you want to have emphasized. So you'll use that point for commenting word by word or line through line to this document that we can't get into tonight.
Just had a quick question on the priority slide, of the priority areas slide. I saw that the legend had the orange, the red, and whatever the other color was, but not the blue, the two shades of blue. So what was the two shades of blue representing on that priorities map?
So that is showing that it's kind of covering that in the background of, these were all the blue areas coming together with these different purposes, the gaps, environmental justice priorities, residential density, and the high needs areas as the underlay. And then we're layering on that, just emphasizing in the pink and orange, those areas that are the highest need.
Okay,
So good question.
okay, thank you.
Showing that there are more gaps, but these were the ones with the most combined.
So as you continue to dig into this document and additional questions or comments or feedback come up, please engage with the staff. I recommend that we set a deadline for feedback for DAC members to get this work moving forward. And so staff will communicate that. Jeanette, back to you.
Thank you. This takes us to item 4, which is DAC member reports. And we'll go ahead and do sort of round robin, and I'll go last with the chair report. Go ahead.
I don't know that I have any report. We had our parks opening and a few of you were there, this last weekend. And if you didn't make it, please get out and see the parks. They were buzzing with kids, and I understand that they've been filled with kids, after school pretty much every day, rain or shine. I did want to mention one thing, kind of tied to the system plan, but also to some former testimony that Thelma gave here in a prior meeting, which is the need for a foundation or a conservancy group Milwaukee has a Parks Foundation and it was founded in 2017, I think. And the people who the people who started that, I think, I'm on the board of that now, but I wasn't really involved in starting it, but I think they would be happy to be, to help advise people on how they went about that and share the founding documents so that somebody doesn't have to reinvent the wheel. So if there is a population in NCPRD that is interested in pursuing that, I'm happy to be a conduit to put you in touch with the folks who founded that Park Foundation. So.
Okay, well, I attended the budget meeting on February 22nd. It was a Zoom meeting. And during that, you got the presentation about projected revenue and expenses and talk about strategies very similar to the presentation we had here. And unless I'm wrong, the next time we'll hear about the budget is on May 14th, where there will be a joint budget committee and DAC meeting.
Period two had worked with Lauren Terry, the natural areas coordinator, set up one of those work parties, a volunteer party at Riverville Park. And sometimes I think that those could be broadcast more widely somehow or made more visible. Because when you do work in a park and you're getting rid of ivy or something, and you're doing it with other people that you may not even know, but you get to know them doing it, it feels pretty special. And then the next time you go to the park, you have a different relationship with it. It's not like fantastically different, but there's something that happens. And so I think it'd be nice if there could be more emphasis on what Lauren does and those events. And I can't even remember if they're always broadcast on the front page of the website or not. But anyway, I think it was good. And the other thing is I'm going to be leaving the DAC at the end of June. And so, it's time to put out the word that if there's somebody in Southern Area too that's into Parks and Rec and want to be part of this thing, or even several people, because we definitely need some alternates as well. That would be awesome.
Sorry, I'm not sure. Excuse me, I'll be very brief. Pardon me, I shared earlier with Jessica, everyone, the Garden Discovery Days that's happening at the Milwaukee Community Center this Saturday. Also, and I saw the big sandwich board for the Oregon Ballet Theater is performing on March 22nd at 5 p.m. That's always very popular, so please share that information. One thing I wanted to say, do an unofficial save the date. The Milwaukee Community Center, we're planning an open house 45th anniversary event on May 16th from 2 to 5. The details will follow on that. But I wanted to at least get that on everyone's radar. It's going to showcase programming, all the great things NCPRD does, as well as all the great opportunities the Milwaukee Community Center offers. So please save that date again, May 16th from 2 to 5. It's a Friday. And it's a no school day, so the idea would be to encourage bringing children that may want to check out mental health. Hopefully kind of a smorgasbord of all the things going on, it'd be fun. And cake and ice cream, of course, so marketing, there's your.
That's good.
Yes,
That's a good one. Music,
yes, performance.
music and food.
Oh, you're on wrong.
Would you like to go, Director Salas? Are you handing it off to
Sure.
Grover? Great.
So there's a group of us in sub area 1 because of our opening coming up, and in previous conversations we've had about the importance of I don't know how many are familiar with this diagram, but I think you all are. It is that there are 5 sub areas, and each sub area represents around 22,000 people, which then if you have 2 representatives, we don't split it up, but we have better access. And to do that, it was designed specifically, by the way, this is modeled after the very first version of NCPRD when it first kicked off in the early 1990s, and they actually had all 5 areas with a board for each of the 5 sub areas. So What we've been attempting to do in the interim is have friends of, et cetera. So we are looking to have a listening session in sub-area 1/2. We have not picked a date yet. We're still working on it, but we're looking at in the latter part of April. There's been discussion amongst people in sub-area 1 as well as sub-area 2 about doing that. The reason that is important is we have openings in both of those sub-areas. If we could do a similar thing after July 1st in sub-area 3 and 4, it does what we really need to do more than anything else. We are not sitting here to express our opinion. We are here to represent the people who live in our sub-area. So if we don't have communication with them, it's hard to do. So it is how to further that. And to use as a comparison, the survey, great, and I love the people talk about those who participated or people who are already participating. It represents 2% of the population of NCPRD. Whereas at least we could get to a higher percentage if we could have more of that direct contact, which leads us to, if people in the current economy and where the world's going currently are going to invest more money in parks, they have to have a more personal relationship with it and feel that it's responsive. So this is in line with helping to support that for all of our benefits, not to the detriment of anything everybody's doing. The more people who are engaged, the more people are likely to be in favor of adding funding. And the last thing I want to say is, I love the consultant that the county hired specifically to talk about how to raise money. And they talked about the example of the Tualatin Hills, which is on this chart and all that. They did a survey. They came back with the results of that survey. They put together a proposition saying, we will do all those things and we need a bond. And that bond passed. So I just want to suggest that it isn't only to change the mill rate or whatever you call it. It is actually ways to look at, this is what everybody said they wanted. And so we can start talking that through in the different sub areas in the listening session. That's the part, because I saw this as implementation team, so that's what caused me to speak so much, but that fits all here, and that was stuff I wanted to say through the whole thing. Done, and thank you very much.
Ellen, you're online.
So I don't have too much to add, just like what what Mayor Beatty said about our parks. It was really great to see those 3 parks being opened and seeing a bunch of people, and it's really fun. I went down a slide. It was great. It was like the best time I've had in a long time. So highly recommend to everybody, if you haven't done it in a while, go down a slide. Brings back a lot of joy. One thing that I did, because it is official, I presented this to the city council of Milwaukee yesterday. Just want to also update, I am not going to be continuing as chair of PARB after from June. So I believe that means that I probably won't be on the DAC either. So I just kind of wanted to give you guys just to let you all know. And that's my update.
Thank you. I don't have a big update from sub-area 3 because our CPO meeting is in early April on the 7th. What I would like to talk about is a topic that's probably not going to be popular, just being super blunt. But Vice Chair Mark and I have talked on and off with staff about the suggestion of going to an every other month meeting. So this was suggested quite some time ago. In terms of that, we know there's a lot of work ahead of us. However, there's also a lot of work that staff puts together in order to arrange these meetings monthly. And right now, considering the forecast, I'm really resolved that the meeting should be once every other month. It's within our bylaws. And if we should need to, we can absolutely call an emergency meeting or a meeting as we need to and put it on the calendar as long as it's noticed in the proper timeline. I have decided that should start effective now. And that is a big change. So April 9th will be a skip month for the DAC. And then we will meet again on May the 14th as the entire DAC. And then so on and so forth. Another benefit I see is that the December month will also be a skip month. And that's usually when a lot of folks can't make it because of holidays and whatnot. I also have a homework assignment. And I would like to ask each of you to think of ideas on how the DAC as a group can use the off time for DAC related work. That does not need to be within a public facing meeting and have the extra scaffolding that's needed to do so. I have some suggestions. And I'll ask kind of just for the thumbs up, thumbs down, would you like to hear them or? Okay, sure. So thank you. So the implementation team, which is our next topic, that will take some considerable amount of time from members of community and members of the DAC as well as staff. That's another thing that can be worked on in the interim. We can certainly help volunteer with the volunteer appreciation brunch. It's going to be at the Milwaukee Community Center. It's not the same time as a meeting, but Mulch Madness is coming up. Similarly, in the month of June, there will be time that will be needed for the implementation team. We will also be asked to review the draft system plan. It's my hope that that is a nice, dense, enjoyable document to read, and I think it will be, but I think it will require some extra time from us to really read it and give that a thorough review. In August, we'll be welcoming new members onto the DAC. That could be subcommittee work, that could be helping our new members get to know the district, get to know the DAC, get to know our amenities. Similarly, in the month of October, there will be a trail plan kickoff as that comes up. I'm previewing Kia's report. So that's another way to get involved in the month of October. And then in November, we're going to be ramping up at our regular meeting because budget prep will be coming and I'm sure that we'll be called on to get feedback. So those are some of my suggestions. I see questions on the floor. I am concerned about time, but I don't want to dismiss any questions. Do you want to go ahead and field those?
Yeah, so I have a framework for us. So if you have a reaction to the proposal for a new meeting cadence, I'm gonna ask you to provide that reaction in 30 seconds or less. If you have a clarifying question about the proposal, you can raise a question now. So are there clarifying questions among the group about the meeting cadence? Joel?
Just a quick one. I was just curious if the timeline or time frame rather, as far as our annual, every other meetings will be at the proposed 1.5 hours, or will we be extending that for some of the window of time? Sorry, that should have been an easier question.
No, that's a great question.
Are we gonna have a
because
longer meeting or is it gonna be?
these meetings used to be 2 hours long. I'm gonna add to the homework to have a position on if it should be 1.5 hours or 2 hours.
That was it.
Any other clarifying questions? Okay, so feedback could,
I think each person has their flag up.
yeah, no, I see, but this is feedback versus questions.
Oh, sorry.
I'm trying to make sure that we're structured in our time. So if you have does anybody have a question about the proposal versus feedback?
I do,
You have a question, Grover? Versus feedback?
I do.
Okay.
So my question is, for those who want to meet under the heading of implementation team, so it would not be a DAC meeting and it would be open to other people. Would we be able to meet in this facility without staff support?
That's a good question.
If it was warmer weather, we could meet elsewhere, but until it is warmer and no rain, we need a place to meet that's indoors.
I don't know that we have a venue for decision making right now, but it is a question that we should be considering and have a deadline for answering.
Yeah, and I think it'll depend on what the staff support entails too, right? Because there's a difference between just using the room and reserving the room free of charge versus setting up AV equipment and, you know, setting up the tables in a specific arrangement, like all of that takes additional staff time, right? So that may weigh in on our response to whether the facility is available for use.
Grover, if you have a recommendation as a part of your homework about what would be the best case use based on how you're thinking about it, I encourage you to bring that to staff. Does that make sense? So if you've been thinking about it, like, hey, we want to use this room, implementation team can do our work based on whatever project work plan Jeanette just outlined or what you have already in terms of listening sessions, just bring that recommendation to staff if you have a point of view about that question.
Well, I just want to be clear, I was suggesting it didn't need staff support.
I know,
for it.
that's what I'm saying.
So
That is
that
a
is what I said,
recommendation.
and I heard your response was, well, there's all the staff support that's needed, and I just wondered, could we use the room?
Yeah.
Period.
So if you have I think that is a recommendation, Grover, that y'all could use the room without staff. Being there if you're working on a particular activity or something related to the project work plan, but again, let's bring it up for consideration for more voices to weigh in.
Yeah, I'm just not sure how we proceed in a timely manner
Yeah.
to organize something that's different than what we had expected. And how we get people invited to do something that isn't a DAC meeting, but keeps us still working with each other so that we don't have a gap. That's when there's, I think we could be doing more rather than less. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I think there are different frameworks that we could explore about how you can continue to do more outside of always requiring staff time, which is what Grover is getting at. So looking at the committee structure is one thing I'd be interested in. So can committees be working on a different cadence than meetings to
Yes.
bring recommendations during meetings, and you can cover potentially a lot more, having done homework and providing a point of view. Daniel?
Probably very quick, just optimistic that we can make it work, with the things coming up that Jeanette said, with recruitment being a big thing. I think we can offset the volunteer implementation, team meetings, mainly just focus on getting the word out, and getting most people involved.
Great. Okay. All right.
So this is 8 p.m. tonight, we're at stop, so.
I just wanted to sound a cautionary note in that Ally and I yesterday were in training from the Oregon Government Ethics Commission about Open Meeting Act rules and learned a lot of eye-opening things, including that like subcommittees do have to have noticing requirements and open meetings and accessible meetings and things like that. So if you are, I just want to put that out there, that there may be some requirements that subcommittees have to.
We can do our due diligence and figure that out. Okay, let's move along in the agenda. Unless Jeanette, do you have a point of view about how to make a decision around the meeting cadence? It sounds like there's support. So you just want to recap?
Yeah, absolutely. So, there's optimism and there's concern about the workload that we have. There's research that we need to assure that subcommittee work can be done that's, correct, based on public meeting law. There's, the homework I have assigned in terms of bringing ideas for how to use off-month time. And also deciding if it's going to be 1.5 hours or 2 hours length for regular meetings.
Great. Thank you. Move on to the next agenda item.
Okay, thank you. So the next item, I think we've foreshadowed, which is our implementation team. That's the name that's used for our recruitment process for new members of the DAC. I, as chair, would like to be on the implementation team. Last year, Mark and I both had some commitments and weren't able to participate. Want to make it clear that I would like to sit on that implementation team. I also would like to get some clarity about the meetings of the implementation team and if they're considered a quorum of our group based on number of attendees. That's probably a question I'll need to bring to staff. I'll also echo what I said in our email out, which is that I'd really like our new folks to participate. That would be wonderful. Go ahead, Grover.
Yes, by definition, an implementation team are made up of residents and they're not on or off the team based on that they're on the DAC, not on the DAC, that the chair, that they, any of those things. These are residents and it is not a meeting of any body. It is people who are residents. Period. So it's not a committee. And it is not a subcommittee. It's not doing committee work. And the other clarification is the sole purpose of the implementation team is not only recruiting. Recruiting is a key piece, but it is the outreach, as I spoke of a few minutes ago, to include more people being aware of, feeling heard, having conversations, etc. So when we get a listening thing in sub area 1 during last summer, it was specifically not an official meeting of the DAC. It was a listening session for people who lived and who attended that meeting in sub area 1. So it is about residents, not about teams or committees or whatnot. So you're welcome to come, but it's not a matter of being on or off. You phrased it in a way that doesn't fit the definition.
I recommend we move this discussion to when we have more time, because it seems like we need to develop a shared definition of what the implementation team is and the composition of it.
I'm still left with the question of when the implementation team will meet. And maybe answer that via email. Outside of this meeting, because I know we're going quite late.
Yeah. Does that work for folks via email and find the date? Great.
Since we've done public comment, that takes us to our district monthly report. Thank you for your patience.
Okay, I want to begin this evening. There was a little mention of this at the last meeting, but I want to officially thank the Milwaukee Community Center Foundation for their very generous one-time donation of $180,000 to sustain the NCPRD Older Adults Nutrition Services Program for next fiscal year amid NCPRD budget cuts. This historic donation will help maintain current service levels for the Meals on Wheels program, while NCPRD reduces general fund subsidy for this program. As discussed last month, the NCPRD fiscal year 25-26 requested budget proposes general fund cost reductions because tax revenue from our fixed permanent tax rate remains relatively flat, while the cost of district operations is rapidly increasing with inflation. I want to also make another plug. I think Joel mentioned this last month, but I want to do this again. If you're able to do so, please consider a donation to the Milwaukee Community Center Foundation. The March for Meals fundraiser is happening now. Speaking of our fixed permanent tax rate, we just received the Clackamas County Tax Assessor's estimates for assessed value growth for the 2025-26 tax year. For our district, they are forecasting tax growth of 2.75 to 3.25%. So since fiscal year 22-23, our operations costs, utilities, materials and supplies, staff, vendors, and other costs of doing business have increased by 14%. So again, our tax revenue, which is the largest revenue fund for the district, is not keeping pace with the rapidly increasing costs of doing business. Yesterday, the board unanimously approved NCPRD's updated naming policy for parks and facilities. The last naming policy was approved by the board in 2006, so it was long overdue in terms of best practices for community engagement and for naming policies. So I want to thank the DAC for their input, which was integrated in its entirety. Yes, that was a huge win, both for staff, because we were able to develop a better policy, and hopefully you all feel the same. A naming process for NCPRD improvements to the Concord property will be launched soon. It won't include naming of the library facility. So I want to be really clear about that, but staff will be closely coordinating with the library district staff, because we do understand that the community will read that entire campus as a community destination. So we're very cognizant of that, and we will work carefully through that process. But please look for that in your inboxes soon. Yesterday, the Oregon Parks and Recreation Department notified staff that they canceled 2 of our 3 grants for Milwaukee Bay Park Phase 3, which includes the $750,000 local government grant and the it's a little over $1 million for the Land and Water Conservation Fund grant. That's a federal grant, but those 2 grants are effectively tied together, and Oregon Parks and Recreation Department administers that federal grant. The reason for the cancellation is primarily due to their perception that NCPRD will be unable to complete the construction project and open the park by September 2026. That's just next year, next fall. NCPRD staff have been in ongoing conversations about this grant extension to September of 2026, which has been supported, and the potential impacts of not meeting that deadline. We were really asking them and pressing them for, so what happens if we open it in October or November, December? As you all know, construction can get delayed. Well, they basically said, the funds expire in September 2026, and there is too much risk for us to rely on those grants. So because of this, OPRD has concerns about our ability to meet that September completion deadline, given the current status of the project. They do support our reapplication for these grants, either this spring or next spring. But they've advised us to update our costs so that our request is truly reflective of project funding needs. So we're still going to continue those conversations. They're still very supportive of us reapplying, but effectively, they think there's just too much risk with us completing the project and closing it out and getting all the money that we need for the project. So I'm happy to take questions about this. I know that's a lot of information. Our meeting's running late tonight, but if you have questions, please send them to Jessica, and then I'll provide a response and send it to everyone so that everyone gets the same information. NCPRD's certified playground inspectors have completed their annual safety inspections of all playground equipment within the district. These inspectors also conduct safety spot checks year-round. We have 2 of these inspectors. Playground equipment that has been deemed unsafe has been repaired and or replaced. There has been some messaging on social media that playgrounds within the district have unsafe equipment. And I want to say about that, I'm a parent, that's very concerning for me to hear that. But I want to be clear that although some of our playground equipment is getting older and showing signs of wear, such as faded colors on plastic parts, based on our inspections of our playground equipment is safe. Safety is our top priority, especially for our tiny humans. They are very vulnerable customers, and we are very mindful of our playground. So if you see a safety issue in a park, please submit a report a concern form, that's what it's called, through our website. We actively monitor these submittals, and we will address that safety issue promptly. And if you see a posting about a safety issue in our park, please have that person report it through that form so that we can address it quickly. On a positive note, our first full catalog of NCPRD programs and events since COVID will launch soon. It's called the Discovery Guide. I'm sure you all remember it. We are limiting our printing of the Discovery Guide to reduce cost and to be more sustainable. So please rely on the digital copy. And if you have trouble navigating the digital copy, contact a staff person in recreation. We can help you with that. The Board of Directors meeting previously scheduled for last month, February 26th, was canceled. We regret that cancellation, but it was due to a lack of quorum. We expect to host a Board of Directors meeting here at the Aquatic Park next quarter, and we will announce that date when we confirm it. Director Fireside has resigned and the board is now working on a process for replacement. They had a conversation about that process today, and I expect over the next week or two, there'll be information on the county's website. So if you're interested in that process, contact or look at the county's website for information.
It was actually yesterday, not today.
Oh, thank you. It seems like today. Thank you for the clarification.
It was in the paper.
Thank you. Lastly, Joe Loomis, NCPRD Sports Manager, is retiring April 30th. Many of you know Joe for his leadership and service to NCPRD and as a former Milwaukee City Councilor. So please join me in thanking Joe if you see him for his dedicated service to the community and wish him well in retirement. I'm sure we will see him. So that concludes my director report, and now I have a question for all of you, and a very quick question. It was news to me this evening that a sale of the Justice property was contemplated. That was before my time here. When was this contemplated, and can you tell me very succinctly why?
Well, it was when Mike Bork was the director, but I don't know what kind of discussions happened.
Okay,
But there was looking for money to pay for what happens at Concord, which is awesome. That was one of the things being considered, but I don't have any details, but, we did have discussions about it, and the new DAC members from that area spoke about it, and also Wilbur and I, because we had gotten to know them and gotten to know somebody who was on the first implementation team who was advocating for the Justice property. So it was a combination of people coming together to speak for developing it and not selling. Is that about right? Grover?
There's plenty of other people who want to weigh in, I'll let them do it.
Oh, or is American. Well, he can probably speak more
Yeah,
to that than I.
That's the first I heard of it, so yeah, that may have been someone's idea or two, but that never made it to the board, and I would not have supported that. Just so you know, because I know that, yeah, I've heard that it's important to that community. And in fact, really the opposite has been our approach, and that was to try to acquire the neighboring property, so
Yes.
that was news to me, I never heard that before, so I'm gonna let you know that the board never heard that or that ever entertained that.
Okay, so we didn't get that far.
We had our own means of dealing with the cost to fund the Concord or the park expansion, so.
I just want to take that nexus to ask about the Justice property and the park property next door. So after the last meeting, I wasn't sure if you said there might still be some potential. So I looked online. I know that the purchaser paid $720,000 or $730,000. I thought something you said last time indicated that maybe discussions were ongoing, but then the way I read it in our packet, it sounded like, no, that's going to be redeveloped, and there's not a further opportunity to try to still acquire that.
so, so thank you for that clarification, or opportunity to clarify, because, I'm sorry if I was confusing. So, I have asked our broker to continue to have conversations with that developer in the event that they find that as they go through the process of seeing if that development pencils, perhaps they might see that it doesn't work for them. And if they decide to sell the property, I have let our broker know that I would like them to continue those conversations and see if we could acquire it. I'm going to consider that an open conversation still, but I should be clear that the developer has purchased it and is proceeding with a proposal. And I understand that there is a pre-application that either has been scheduled or actually occurred for that site. So I think that plans are underway. But as everyone around the table knows, sometimes developments don't pencil, the economy changes, or the interest of the developer or their investors change. So again, I've just kept that burner warm, and still hoping for that opportunity.
Just the property is encumbered by wetlands, and that's not good for a developer, but that would be great for us, right? Because that's environmental asset, that's something that would be a feature, so.
Yeah.
This developer may not realize it, as Kia said, to be consistent here, it may not pencil, and we're hopeful that. He knows the door's open, the
That's right.
developer,
That's right.
to sell the property to us.
Thank you.
So the presumption is that we made an offer and they chose the other offer, which was higher than our offer. Is that a presumption?
I don't want to go into the details.
That
of-
wasn't a detail.
But
Did they bid higher?
But we did make an offer. We actually pursued acquisition of that property before it officially became for sale. It was going through a probate process, and it's we were clear that we were an interested purchaser, but our offer was not accepted.
Okay, and then on the other topic of the, somewhere in one of our packets from the beginning of the DAC till 2 years in, there was a listing for the Justice property is being considered for sale by name, listed as a potential sale property. So whether it was actually put on the market, don't know, but it's, I'll stop it. I had other things to say that wouldn't help.
It gets into to lore almost, because I've also heard that it was considered as a site for a potential fire station. I mean, I think it's, if you go far back, the brainstorming and then what actually comes out, you know, they start to diverge. I think you alluded to that.
If you could send it out, I'd like to see it.
I don't know what it is. I'm not gonna dig through 2 years
Yeah.
of packets to find. the-
Anyone knows where it's at, please send it.
Oh, sorry, yes, we're adjourned.